All right, welcome to KM6LYW Radio. I was just playing with the Whisper here, Whisper propagation stuff, really low signal to noise ratio, even better than FT8, supposedly. I'm at 5 watts. Actually, Patty, you got me into this. Thanks, Patty. You're talking about Whisper. FT8 actually can do Whisper. It's one of the modes here. I know this is hard to read, but we got FT8 up here. We can go down to Whisper and then go to whispernet.org and you can see a map of all the cool places that are hearing you and the places that you are hearing. So actually, I've got Whisper running here on the 7300, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about antennas a little bit. We're going to talk about all the different bands we can get, how to hide them. Maybe you're in an HOA, stealthy antennas, maybe antennas for portable. HF antennas. I've got a few growing in the backyard in the antenna farm, and we're going to play a game actually. We're going to see if you can see them or not, and then maybe you can tell me what antennas you guys have got, what I'm doing wrong. Let me know. We're going to get back to that next on KM6LYW Radio. Okay, welcome back. This is extremely low budget production here. And that's our bumper music. I don't know. It seems like all videos have, everything's formulaic. Everything has to have bumper music. We have to have, actually, we have to have one of these round lights. I actually forgot to turn on. I got one of those round lights up here, so you guys can see what's going on. So the 7300 here is in whisper mode. We're not going to play with that today. We're going to actually look at some pictures, if that's okay. Let me get rid of some of this whisper stuff, and I'm going to pull up pictures. Now this is Casa del KM6LYW radio. I'm gonna make this as big as I can. Fill up the whole screen here to some extent. So this is the side of my house. Now in this picture, there are actually, let me see, I know where they are, and I know they're hard to see. So I do live in a homeowners association. They're actually pretty good about this. If you ask them, to put up an antenna, they'd probably just say, yeah, right on. They've got rules regarding antennas. And so talk to your homeowners association first. Maybe do it anonymously. If they don't know you, just walk up and say, "Hey, what's the deal with antennas? If we asked you to put one up, if I asked to put one up, what are the constraints?" So there's a million different antenna designs. These aren't the best, but they are stealthy and they are effective based on my requirements and constraints. So when you put up an antenna, you're always going to have requirements. What bands do you need? Kind of gain do you need? Those are your requirements, and question those. And then also your constraints. How much land do you have? Where can you put up an antenna? Do you have a wife that doesn't really like an antenna farm in the backyard or a bunch of stuff growing out of a roof? Is there HOA? Are the HOA constraints real? You get those like in writing up front. So you got requirements and constraints, and question both of those. Always question your requirements. What do you really need? And always question your constraints. What am I being constrained by? What can't I do when putting up an antenna? Of course, I think everyone, ideally would have a huge, gigantic mask and a big hex beam, or maybe a 160 meter dipole at I don't know how high would that need to be at 80 meters high. Of course, we'd like to have all that, but we just can't do it all the time. So in this picture, you're seeing most of my antennas. Actually, there's one that's not in this antenna, one external picture. So there's 1, 2, 3 antennas, and those antennas get 80, 40, 30, 20 meters, 15 meters, 12 meters, 10 meters, 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. So I'm getting all of that and transmitting on all of that with the relatively low SWR and relatively low Q factor, relatively low compromise when it comes to SWR curves. We could actually talk about Q factor here in a little bit. So this is my house, and the antennas are here. So I'm going to see if I can draw these in. Maybe I can zoom a little bit. So let me do a zoom. I don't know. How do you zoom? We're zoomed at 50%. Let's do 1 to 4. Nah, that's the wrong way. I'm using GIMP image editor here. I'm a GIMP learner. So zoom. Let's do 1 to 1. All right, here we go. 1 to 1. So this is the top of the house still that you guys are just looking at. Hopefully this isn't cropping off here. And I can move this a little bit. All right, so I'm going to draw in the antenna. So like I said, I had virtually all HF bands and 2 meters and 70 centimeters. I don't know, maybe you can see the antennas now. There are 3 antennas in this picture. All right, so let's start with the HF antenna. Let's see if you can see it. Now, right here, just below this line, there's a balloon. There's a one-to-one current balloon, and there's actually a fan dipole in the backyard. Now, a fan dipole is like a regular dipole where you feed it from the center, and in this case, it's an inverted V. And if you can get it about this angle, I don't remember what this angle is, you can get an SWR of usually like a 1 to 1. This is about a 50 ohm impedance point. If you come up to a flat top, you get about a 75 ohm impedance point. So do try, if you're putting up a dipole or fan dipole like this one, do try and get an angle on it. And they call that an inverted V. So right where this green dot is my 1 to 1 current balloon. You know, it's maybe 40 bucks. It's got two terminals on it, and then it's got a coax connector on the bottom. They look a lot like this little piece of pipe, only they've got some inductors in there that help match the unbalanced cable to the balanced antenna wire. And you can actually hook a bunch of different wires up to this. Usually people just hook like a 40-meter legs onto their current balun. And yeah, they can get 40-meter frequencies, but you can hook more wires on there. So if you look at this picture, I don't know if you can see it, I have actually 20-meter legs here going down this way, and I don't know how long, they're probably a little longer than this. These are my 20-meter legs. And then I've also got 40-meter legs, which stretch out here. And then above that, I kind of experimented with a hybrid dipole using loading coils. Not traps, but loading coils. So this is a 80 and 30. Let's see if I can get this right. This one's actually pretty long. So that is what the dipole looks like in the backyard. How cool is that? Now on this, let me see if I can change my pin color here. I don't know. I'll make it white. So right about here, I have loading coils on the 80-meter legs. So the 80-meter legs aren't really as long as they should be. So I have coils, so you can get some PVC pipe. This is some 1.5 inch. Hopefully you guys can still see this 1.5 inch PVC pipe, and then you can get some what they call magnet wire on Amazon. So this is magnet wire. I forget the gauge here. I've got it somewhere. Not the thicker stuff, not the really thin stuff. I've got it here somewhere. So this is 1 pound of 18 gauge magnet wire, and I did about 57 turns on this to shorten these 80-meter legs, and I put them right where you would cut it for 30 meters for 10 megahertz. And it turns out that this air coil, this air inductor, will actually resonate at about 12 megahertz, which is a really high impedance for 30 meters. So I can actually get 30 meters inside of these coils, and then I can get 80 meters using the complete antenna that goes through this. Now the 80-meter stuff has a really high Q, so I can really only get the lower portion of what I just tuned it for the general phone band for 80 meters. So in doing this, I actually get a pretty good 20-meter down here. I get 40-meter legs here. I got 30-meter legs inside of this wire, and then this complete wire is resonant on 80 meters. And of course, you get all of the little multiples. So like if you have a 40-meter legs, you automatically get what, 15 meters? That's 21 megahertz because it's 3 times, right? It's a triple. So you get, and that's how I get all of these bands. So that's the fan dipole in the backyard, all extending from this current balloon. And I had the feed line runs down here, and it runs in a crack in the concrete, the back patio. It's totally invisible. Initially, I was thinking, man, how am I going to get a wire to the backyard? Because I totally have concrete around the house. But use an expansion joint if you have them in your patio or your sidewalk. They'll be there to mitigate control cracking. But you'd be surprised that an RG58, no, it's RG8X is what I'm using to the dipole will actually fit in an expansion joint in the concrete. So that is my HF bands. And then if you've still been looking, I told you there's 3 antennas here. Let me pick another color for this one. I don't know. I'll pick red, light red. I also have a VHF. I can go on the right side of it. It's right here. It is. Now I'm gonna tell you what this is. So most people just call this a roll-up J-pole antenna. I know that sounds ghetto, but it's totally cool. I guess if you called it a off-center fed dipole folded in half, it sounds sexier. It sounds like a better antenna. But that's that antenna right there. In fact, I'm sure I've got a better picture of that here. This is the roll-up J-pole that's on a fly rod, actually, a fiberglass fly rod. Don't use carbon fiber, and just zip tie it to that. And then I got some LMR 400 Superflex going to that. And actually, that antenna is right above uh, my VHF area, which is behind me over here. I don't know, can you see my VHF? The VHF desk. So that's the roll-up J-pole that's on a fly rod sticking out of the roof, and I've got a shortest possible amount of cable going down into the house. This cable you see here up to the right is actual Comcast 75 ohm cable. So that's the roll-up J-pole hanging out on top of the roof, and I get VHF and UHF. In fact, they're really easy to make. If you want to get one of these, you can get one from N9TAX. That's November 9 Tango Alpha X-ray. And they're just made out of this 450 ohm ladder line. You guys have seen this, right? And it's about this long, and the feed point is right here on either side, and this is connected at the bottom. And then there's a little cut right here that completes the J of the J pole. So it's cut right there. And of course, the rest is folded in half. And if you get the fancy model from N9TAX on this roll-up J pole, he actually has some traps right here for UHF. This is just a little bit of I don't know what this is. It's coax. I don't know what gauge it is, but ultimately this creates a little bit of capacitance at the right spot to help trap 70 centimeters. So you can get 2 meters and 70 centimeters out of this antenna by N9TAX. It's a cool antenna. And of course, they have backpacker versions also. This is the same exact design, only it uses the 300 ohm stuff that let me see if I can roll this one up. And it too has a little cut in it right here to complete it, for the J on the J pole. And it's basically, and this is ultralight, and you can string these up into trees, which I've actually done. I think I got a picture of it somewhere. I told you there's 3 antennas. Nah, not this one. Um, let me see if I can get back to it. So this is the one that's actually strung up in the tree, and it's in front of my dipole, and that is this one right here. I actually caught it in the sun, so you could actually see the glint of this of this roll-up J pole. This is the 300 ohm version, and let me see if I can zoom that in. Oh man, that's way too much zoom. Let me get that. Let me get that working right. All right, come on, let's get you. I don't know what zoom. Should we zoom 1 to 1? Yeah, that's good enough. So this is that J-pole antenna I just showed you, the 300 ohm stuff. And I've got some, they call it zip line. It's arborists use it to throw antennas up into trees. That's really what these are good at, these dangling roll-up J-poles. I think it's called zip line. And arborists use it like for throwing weights over trees, when they're taking down branches and things like that. It's a yellow line. It's really thin. It is really expensive, but it's great for slinging antennas over trees. So that's the other roll-up J-pole. And then there's another antenna you didn't see in the initial shot. So we covered the one sticking out of the roof, and then there's also actually another roll-up J-pole that's hanging down in the backyard. That's the one I just showed you back here, and that's the one I use for portable when I'm just outside on the porch. Throw that over the tree. So that's all the antennas in that shot, and then there's one other antenna way over on the other side of the house that I use when I'm in the living room. So this is all over the ham shack, right? So over the living room, I actually built a quarter wave ground plane, and this turned out really well. Really easy build. Let me see if I can get a good picture of it. So this is a quarter wave ground plane. It's made out of a PVC pipe riser, and then there's an end cap on it. And then what you can do is get some thick copper wire, maybe some welding rods. In this case, I just found a small coil of like number 10 solid copper wire that had insulation on it. And of course, I painted it kind of green to blend into the trees. But you can actually make that antenna using this little guy right here. This is an SO238. I forget. It's not PL259, SO238 connector. And it has on this where you would normally solder on, your cable end. It's a bulkhead connector, so make sure it has these holes on it. You have an emitter rod of about 19 inches sticking out of the top of this. That's this guy right here, the emitter. And then you've got the ground plane legs that bolt on to the sides of this connector. So this thing is like an antenna all by itself. So you just get one of these for like $4. get some wire, and then you can weatherproof it. When I put this cap on, I melted some slots in the cap to keep it weatherproof, and then you can put some like gutter sealer or something on that. And that's the quarter wave ground plane, and that has a wire that goes down to the living room for my HT that I have on the other side of the house. So that is all of the antennas that I have. These have been just total trial and error. I know most people just go out and buy like a diamond antenna, with a pearl white radome. It just didn't blend in. It's not that I don't care so much. It's the homeowners association. Maybe they would care. Maybe the wife cares. And I don't want a bunch of ugly stuff on my house. Unfortunately, to make a really good antenna, like the perfect antenna that meets all of your requirements and you have no constraints, it has to be really awkward, ugly, and hard to install. Right? That's always the best antenna. It's really awkward, ugly, and difficult. That's always going to be your best antenna. But all of these are compromises to some extent. I thought I'd mention that loading coil I mentioned on the HF antenna. That's a picture of it. That's the coil with all of 57 turns of 18 gauge magnet wire on it. And that's right at where you would cut it for 30 meters. So you get that 30-meter band inside of those 80-meter legs. On your dipole, I think I covered all my antenna stuff. These are just some different shots. I was hoping we would play a game like, hey, can you see the antenna? Play homeowners association inspector and tell me you can't see these antennas. I mean, I had to draw some lines on some of these to, to make them work. This is just a closer shot of the current balloon that's way up in the tree for the fan dipole. So this is the current balloon here, and then I've got the 80-meter legs, I've got the 40-meter legs, and I've got the 20-meter legs coming off, going off here like this, and they're all stuck to the same terminals, which are up here. There's two positive, negative terminal, and then I kind of ran them down the side of the pipe, and then I used a zip tie, so to get the wires away from each other, and some tape, and then that's how those are suspended. And I get really good SWR on all bands. 20 comes up is a little high for some reason because each leg kind of impacts the one below it. And when we're talking about a fan dipole, I don't know if I can illustrate this. It doesn't all have to be in one plane. You can have a spider dipole, which is kind of what this is. So instead of all the wires being in the same plane, you can actually, make it more like a spider and have them going different directions, and they interfere with each other less. So when you do make one of these, start at the top and then cut, measure, cut, and then do the next legs underneath that and cut and measure. And I think that was the order I did. And there was a lot of cutting and recutting, and it was a real hassle, honestly, to weave this through this oak tree. Again, there's the current balloon, and there's the 80 meter, 80, 40, 20 coming off of that tree. But it was a real bear to weave this through the tree. So get like a painter's pole, maybe. That's what I used. And put a hook on it and kind of help the wires over the tough spots. When you're going to throw a line through, maybe I use like a heavy socket, like for a socket wrench. And I use that as a weight. But this took days to install. You can't just go throw up one of these antennas if you're going to weave it through one of these oak trees. And the contacts have been great on this. Here's my current balloon. Here's the 80, 40, 20. This is a north-south orientation. I don't get Europe as much as I'd like, I think because of that, but I'm really solid into South America um, and Asia, and every now and then I'll get Australia. So, and here of course, here's the feed line on this guy. So that's the fan dipole, and then you run out into other trees. I weight down the feed lines, or what do you call them, the extension ropes on the end of each wire with a rock. I don't tie them off to anything rigid because, man, when there's a storm, this thing gets rocking and rolling, and it'll just tear your antenna apart. So use rocks or weights at the end of your lines. And also, I did kind of cheat, and I put a stainless steel pulley right up there. I don't think I have an example of one here. That allow me to raise and lower the dipole and reduce the tension on those lines, like in a windstorm. So I can lower using the guy rod. I can lower the balloon all the way down here, and all the wires are limp, and then they can rock and roll, no problem. All right, so we talked about the antennas at KM6LYW Radio Shack. I always wanted to do an antenna video. I don't know a lot about them. I'm not saying these are right or wrong. This just happens to work in my situation. Of course, I'm out in the country. I'm really lucky. I can put up a large dipole with effectively 40-meter legs. I could have put up 80-meter legs if I really wanted to, but they're really going to start getting drapey in the backyard. And honestly, I don't notice them where they are. So I'm cool with this antenna situation. Let me know what you guys do for antennas. I just heard my radio doing JTX stuff. I'm doing whisper. I wanted to see if I've been heard. While we've been doing this, I'm multitasking, so I'm recording a video for you guys and doing whisper stuff, just to see how many people have seen or heard me. Wow, this is the whisper map, and we're doing pretty good here. This is at 5 watts, you guys. I wish you could tell me which stations I've heard or haven't heard. So I know NH6V has heard me. He's in Hawaii. Of course, I'm in California. This is cool, all these stations. And Alaska is hearing me. So whisper, that's at 5 watts. These are really low. These are the whisper signals. In fact, on 30 meters, they're at 10.1387. Look at all these signals inside there. All right, so yeah, I'm sorry. I'm playing with whisper mode on my ham radio while we're making this video. So no video would be complete if I didn't thank everyone who makes this possible. Patreon.com/KM6LYW radio. If you chip in a buck, it's a huge help. It helps with ping, pipe, and power. It gets you early access to software from KM6LYW radio. If you haven't seen the DigiPi, for example, go to Krager.org/DigiPi and you can download a data hotspot for your amateur radio. It works with any kind of radio you want, and it's Raspberry Pi based. And you can do APRS packet, FT8. You can do Whisper. Patty, you can do Whisper. You're the one to turn me on to this. On the DigiPi image. Patrons get exclusive access to the Raspberry Pi image for the DigiPi amateur radio data hotspot. So patrons, thank you very much. Fu, Brian, Jake, Jason, Dan, you guys have stuck it out the longest here. I think this is by data if I remember right. We've got a good bunch of people out on Discord doing great stuff. I wish I could, highlight some of the cool conversations we've had. Rob is our official hardware engineer. Thank you, Rob, for doing some of your hardware stuff. I don't know what do we got. I just wanted to show you what he's built recently. There's some cases that we need. We desperately need a case for the DigiPi. So I don't know if you guys come up with one. So, PD1MV. This is, I think you're the one working on this case. Yeah, this is like a 705 stand and case. What would be cool is we can bed the DigiPi in there. I see you've got it in there, and then somehow get the monitor like right on the front of this. I don't know, that would be cool. Anyways, we're going into Discord now. All right, so patrons, thank you guys. Steve, Don, William, Kevin. Actually, Kevin, you're in there twice. I remember there's a reason for that. Kevin, lots of Kevins. David, Brian, John, Claude, Eddie, Bruce, going through them all. Rocky, thank you. Uppercase Rocky. Yeah, it really stands out when you use uppercase in your Patreon login. I don't know why. Mike, Q1Q. This looks like an eyeballs to me, like an eyeball and a nose. I don't know. SB Fox. Jesus is great. That's a cool call. That's a cool handle too. Love it. Fred, David, James, Ziggy Zog, and getting down. We got the new guys down here. God, look at we got Ryan, Jeff, Matt, BB, KB3AYY. Let me know your first name. KB3AYY, and Scott, Mark, Malcolm, Steve. Thank you, new guys. I appreciate it. All right, so that's been us talking about radios in my backyard. I know it sounds boring, but that's probably like a year's worth of messing around in the backyard, looking up at the sun, all these scratches on me from climbing those trees, trying to get stuff unstuck. But that is how I send and receive signals from this house here at KM6LYW Radio. Please like and subscribe. We're over 1,000 subscribers, which is amazing. Completely exceeded my expectations. You guys are blowing me away. I just thought, I'd make some funny videos on YouTube just to see what would happen, and it's with your support, it's just blown me away. Completely exceeded my expectations. So I will talk to you guys next week. This is KM6LYW Radio, and I am clear.